All right, we'll see how this goes. Running Unreal and screen recording and sharing to the projector. It's a lot of stuff for a laptop to do. At least there's no Zoom portion right now. Zoom is the most intense software known to mankind. Your computer fans will come on. All right, so let's get started with Unreal then. So here we are with our Epic launcher. And I have a number of projects here. If you already have yours open, that's fine. But I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and, actually I think I do. Do I? Yeah, I do. Ta-da! I just opened my project, just like that. So when you open Unreal Engine, let me reset my layout here. Default editor layout. There we go. When you open Unreal Engine, this is what you should see, unless you've gone and moved things around. First thing that you should kind of know is that you can move all these menus around. If you want the content browser to be here, you can move it around. If you want it to be up here in a tab, you can move it around. Oops, I closed it down. Well, we can go to Window and we can get it back. All these windows are completely repositionable, just like you would expect with any sort of computer software these days. I will say this is a little bit more important with a 3D tool because there's just a lot of stuff going on. How do I get that back to where I wanted it? No, I don't want it over there. There we go. Well, once you change it, you can't get it back. Window, load layout, default editor layout. Especially useful if you're working on multiple monitors and stuff. Spread out your menus over multiple monitors. I feel really claustrophobic, restricted to a single monitor here, let alone a laptop screen. All right, so here's our main window. And if you've never navigated in 3D before, let this be a crash course. So first thing, everybody should be using a mouse. If you're using a trackpad, oh, good luck. I feel really bad for you, because it's going to be difficult to navigate 3D with a trackpad. It can be done, but a 3-button mouse is most useful. So to navigate here, hold down left mouse button and you can kind of drive yourself around. Up in the top right, there's this little camera icon. That's basically a speed multiplier. So if I crank this way up, warning, it's going to shoot me way far away. A little mouse movement makes me move a lot more. I can also crank it down, so I really have to move my mouse to move. I have to pick up my mouse to get me to move a little bit. So if you're working with big areas, just know that you can move. You don't have to pick up your mouse 1,000 times and drag, drag, drag to get yourself around your big level. All right, that's left click. Right click is kind of like head look, where you tilt your head around on your neck and you look around. Both mouse buttons together allows you to pan or strafe side to side and up and down. As you get comfortable with 3D, you will use all of these things in tandem to look around. And you'll just get more familiar with it. Those of you that have used a 3D tool before, you may be familiar with using the Alt or Option key. You can do that in Unreal as well. Alt and Option, hold down Alt or Option, and your right mouse button allows you to zoom in and out. Alt or Option allows you to pivot. At least in Maya, there's the F key for focus. If you select something, like this chair, just by left clicking on it and you hit F on your keyboard, you focus on it. And then if I hold down Alt or Option and left click, I can orbit around it and zoom in and out. If you ever get really, really lost, you can also double click on something over in the world outliner. So like a chair or something, and you'll just zoom right to that. It's like if I click on the sky sphere, it's going to take me way far away. Oh no, how am I ever going to get back to the table and chairs? I'll just double click on it in the outliner here. It'll take me right there. Might be a little disorienting, but otherwise fairly straightforward. Just takes a little practice. The nice thing is it's Unreal Engine, real-time rendering engine. What we see is what we get. If this was Cinema or Maya, we'd have to wait to see what that camera angle rendered out to be. Okay. I'm working with a minimal default map right now. This is kind of the standard default map. If you don't have this, it's not that big of a deal. Same thing. I'm just using the assets that are here. So let's start moving around an object, kind of the next basic thing that we can do in Unreal Engine. So I'm going to go ahead and select the chair by clicking on it. Looks like you are in foliage mode. If any of you ever get to a case where there's a new toolbar that pops up and you can't do anything, it's probably because, well, this little pop-up's covering it up, but the top one there, the one that's checked, says select. You're selecting things, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be in selection mode. Just make sure that your mode is select. We will be using these other modes less or not at all. But I think you can accidentally end up in them by the shift number key. So just be aware. So let's go ahead and select a chair, or if you don't have a chair, select the ground or something. It really doesn't matter. Okay, so when you select something, you probably see this little widget here. Arrows, green, red, and blue. This is X, Y, and Z. If you've used a 3D tool before, this might be a different orientation than what you're used to. In Unreal Engine, Z is up. In most other 3D tools, Z is forward and back. But in Unreal Engine, Z is up. Z is blue, Y is green, and X is red. Just like a mathematical graph, X, Y, and Z. If you grab onto these arrows, for some reason my cursor has disappeared. I think it's because I'm recording. So it's difficult for me to grab onto these arrows when you can't see your cursor. There we go. If you grab onto these arrows, you can move things around. Oh, cursor's back. Cool. So move things around. As you move things around, if you look over in the details panel on the right, you should see those numbers change. See how my Y value changes? You could also just change the numbers manually over in the details panel. There's a lot of different ways to do the same thing in any sort of software. Same thing with Unreal Engine. I'm showing you 1 or 2 ways, but if you have something that's more efficient, then use it. If you hit the E or the R key on your keyboard, the widget will change. W, E, and R. Translation, rotation, and scale. So this is rotation, E. R is scale. You can scale uniformly, or you can scale in one axis independently. You can also use the space bar on your keyboard to cycle through these widgets. See the icon changing in the top right of my main viewport there? You can also use those icons up top to select these guys up here. If you're rotating, you might notice that it's snapping in 10-degree increments. It's also If you try to move it, it's snapping, or if you try to scale it, it's snapping. These indicators up top here, the 1010 and the 0.25, those are snapping icons. They're all yellow right now. If you click the yellow ones, you will turn off snapping for translation or rotation or scale. You can also change the amount of snapping if you want snapping. Snapping can be a good thing because it helps things be aligned to each other. But if you really want to just do it manually, you can turn off snapping that way. While we are up here, in the top right of your screen, your viewport screen, there are this little white icon. If you click that, you will end up with 4 windows. This is a back view and a right view and a top view. If you've ever used 3D before, or even 3D in After Effects, you will have seen something like this before. So if I move the chair in one of these windows, it's going to move in the other ones when I let go. And you can always just make one of them go full screen by clicking the button in the top right too, if you want one of those views to go full screen, or the main viewport to go back to full screen. So I just threw a lot of stuff at you. Any questions so far? Anybody struggling? Yeah. You can move around in this, just like you can one, scroll out, scroll wheel. I think it was too close or something like that. Yeah.
Well, it says line history, so it's not showing.
That's fine. So if you see that, most people should see the red text, like I have too. It says lighting needs to be rebuilt. Remember we talked about baked lighting? If you move those chairs away, you should see that the shadows don't move, right? So that shadow is baked into the texture for the ground. We can fix that though. Or we could fix it by either baking our lighting, or we could go and find the light. So in the outliner, find the light source and make it from stationary into movable when clicked on it. And that message should go away. And also, you should be able to click the chairs. Man, not having a cursor is really tough. And the shadow should move. So for this class, I would recommend just making all your lights movable. Otherwise, there's a lot of potential disasters that can happen. The lighting's not going to look as good because you're giving up pretty light bounces, but at least then it's what you see is what you get. Perhaps in a future class we can talk a little bit more about baked lighting. It's just a lot of problems that you can run into. Okay. Down in the bottom, at least by default, there's a content browser. If you lose this window, remember you can always go to Window and get back anything that you lost, just like Photoshop or Premiere or any program. I'm going to click on the little icon below the green button in the content browser to the left there. That's going to give me a folder view. So this is the stuff that I have in my project. I have my content folder and I have my starter content. And to show you how this kind of works, you don't have to do this, but I'm gonna browse to where this project actually is on my hard drive. So I'm just gonna right click on this. You can just watch, you don't have to do this. Right click and show and explore, or in your case, I guess, Finder. And it's gonna take me to my hard drive. This is located on my T drive in a folder called SVA, because that's what I named the project, in a content folder. In the content folder, I have starter content, which we saw in the content browser in Unreal. So that's kind of how the folders are structured. Okay, so it's pretty one-to-one. It's not that abstracted. So I have the starter content. If you don't have the starter content, you can just follow along. If you do, you can go ahead and use that. If you don't have the starter content, you could potentially add it by clicking on the green button and go up top here to add feature or content pack. This may work, but it may not. And if you go over to the third tab, content packs, there's starter content. And you can add it that way, maybe. So in my starter content, I have some other stuff. Props, particles, textures, all that stuff we talked about. Props, there's a bunch of static meshes here that I could use. What do we got? There's a big rock. I can just drag it in from the content browser. Just drag it into your level. There's a couch here. Just a bunch of stuff. I'll drag in this bush. Maybe I'll click on the particles folder, and you can't go wrong with some steam, so I'll drag some steam in. Of course, where there's smoke, there's fire, so I'll drag that in too. And very quickly, I made a little scene here. It's not the best thing I've ever made, maybe the second best, but very easily you just drag and drop stuff in, right? So once you have the stuff in the content browser, you just got to compose it and move it around. Eventually, in a future class, we'll talk about cameras and stuff. Right now, our camera is just kind of us flying around the world. You see all these icons here for the little star icons that represent the steam and the fire, the little gamepad, and then the icons up top. These are icons that represent actors in the world that are not meshes. If you want those icons to go away, you can use the G key on your keyboard, G for game, and it will hide all of that, those UI elements, as well as the grid and that sort of stuff. So if you're trying to take a pretty screenshot, game view, G key. So the starter content is the coolest, I know, but why don't I show you how to bring something in from the marketplace? So if you wanted to import something that's external, perhaps you made your own 3D model in Blender, you can add import with the green button there. Importing a texture, importing a mesh, importing a sound file. Eventually we'll import video files. We'll do it all with the add import. Let's not get too crazy today though. Let's keep it simple. So this pipeline right here that I'm going to show you for bringing in marketplace assets is going to be very valuable to you for this semester. So take note of this. So I'm going to go back to the Epic Launcher. And I'm going to go to the marketplace. This is a big test for everybody here because we're having some problems doing this in this class. So I want you to go to the free tab. See free right in the middle here. Free for the month, I guess. And I don't know, let's all get this countryside windmills and barns. This is going to be a country project that we're doing here. So I already did this, but you go ahead and just click on it. And it's going to say add to cart or something like that. Go ahead and add it to your cart. This is where if you haven't logged into the Epic Launcher, it's going to ask you to log in. This is a free asset, so don't worry about adding it to the cart. It's going to be free. When you add it to the cart, you can go ahead and check out with the shopping carts in the top right. I've already done this, so it's not letting me add it to my cart. I guess I could do it with a different asset. I'll add this to the cart. Yeah, in the cart, you can just go and check out. It'll send you an email, say, hey, you bought this free asset. Cool. Every month, there's like 5 to 8 different free assets that are released, and then they go away. You can go in and get all of these, and you don't have to use them. They just sit in your, they call it the vault in the Epic Launcher. They just sit in your account. So you never know when you're going to need a photorealistic scan of a Buddha sculpture or some dynamic volumetric clouds or a windmill in a barn. So the point is, go and get that free stuff. Okay, after you do that, it will go ahead and download. And if you check out, after you check out, it should say, go back to, oh, right, you go to the actual Epic Launcher. Potential disaster. Let me recreate this problem on the Mac. I would be using the Mac with y'all, but I can't record on the Mac. It doesn't have a microphone either, so that's why I'm using my laptop. All right, let me try to recreate this on the Mac. Can anybody get it added?
You can add it at the top.
Oh, so it didn't come. Maybe it's just an error, but it comes in anyways. Okay. But did it take you to the website too?
Yeah.
Okay. But then it comes down bottom. So if you go back to the launcher, the Epic Launcher, and go to your library. Show me how you did it. I'll do that. Just came up. Y'all are cursed. All right, let's I have a suggestion. Okay. So this was potentially expected. So what you're going to do is you're going to put this little icon right here. Put that pop up. Put this. And do it there. And then try it again. Try it again. What's that? Yeah, same thing. Some yeah, let's just do it.
Oh.
So if this problem happens, this is a trick that we have to, we knew this was going to happen, I just didn't know when, and click that. You only really need to do this when getting assets. This is just your oh. This didn't put us in that. You didn't have to. You just wait. You just wait.
So I have been projects.
Mm-hmm.
It's cute. I tried it, and it's one very
Oh no, abort. Try closing down the logo editor and real. Sometimes that fix says. I think that there's that one when you're trying to add it to it. Then bring up the launcher and see if that's ready. You're good. Go ahead and add that to the project. It gives you an error. Yep. So cancel that. Click on this right here. Yep. So if this ever happens, this is what you're going to do. You click that, and then you're going to click that. Yep. And that's going to give you permission to do this in Unreal Engine. That should allow you to do it.
I think it's just
Same thing?
just restarting my computer.
Can't hurt. Start pulling out the wires. Give it a good smack. That worked out for everybody? No? Launch it. You get this one. Or, oh, you got it. I'll just look at that. There. Yeah, you see there, so cancel. So way to bypass this error is that. So when this is just so you're on the line, like on these maps, I don't know. Just click on that. And after that, you do that. Just do the same thing. Don't do that much. That's just your regular login. All right. Disaster averted, I think. We were expecting that to happen, just didn't know when it was going to happen, and it's kind of weird it only happened to half of you. That's all right. So after you get something in the marketplace, if you go back to your library, you will see that you have it in there. I have tons of stuff because, you know, I've gotten lots of stuff over the years. So I'm going to find the country. There we go. Add to project, pick your project. If for some reason your project doesn't pop up here someday, click on Show All Projects button, and then there'll be a drop down here to pick which engine version. Just pick the most recent one, and then you should be able to install it to your project. Oh, 2 gigs. Should have picked something a little smaller. Did anybody finish this? I picked the biggest one. I might pick something that I have a little bit more lightweight, just in the interest of time. I'll let that download though. Good? When in doubt, blow it up. All right, I'm going to pick something else, but it's the same thing. This is a little bit smaller. I'm going to pick this little dinosaur here, because I know that it's pretty small. Add to project. SVA, add to project. Of course, I get cube 2. Stop. There we go. 30 megabytes instead of 2,000 megabytes. The SVA's Wi-Fi is just dragging for me. All right, done. So I've added it to my project. If I go back to Unreal, now, instead of just starter content, I have a Brachiosaurus folder. Inside this Brachiosaurus folder, inside your asset folder for whatever it is that you added to your project, there could be a bunch of different things in here. There's probably textures, there's probably materials, there might be animations, there might be maps. Maps are cool because they're kind of like shopping galleries of the asset that you just downloaded or purchased. And here's some textures for this dinosaur. It's a whole bunch of stuff. You can double click on any of this. Here's the textures for the dinosaur. Here's some animations for the dinosaur. Yeah, look at this guy. Just eating some leaves on a tree, I guess. Hey, little guy. Or big guy, I guess. So whatever your asset is, you'll have a bunch of stuff from that asset in your content browser. So if you drag something new into your world, or if you weren't able to drag anything in, you could just use the table and chairs, I suppose. I'm going to shrink this dino down. Move him back a little bit. Maybe I will. Hey, this is up to you. Just do a little world building by maneuvering things around. I want this dino guy to look like he's standing on a rock. Let's make a big rock. Very interesting, the coolest. I'm going to kill this steam in the fire. You can just select an asset and hit your delete key and it will remove it from your world. So using the marketplace to get assets, treating them like Lego pieces. This is how we're going to build our worlds in here. You can try to use custom things, but like I said, that comes with a lot of knowledge required to be able to make it work. I'm happy to entertain that, but just be prepared. It's not going to be as simple as the marketplace is. Also, I'm not asking you to buy assets for this class. You're welcome to, but we can use free stuff to make do. Sure. Can you do it? I understand. Oh, you want to cut it in half? No. No, you would have to do that in the I'll give you guys another minute or two, and then we're going to bring in our image and do the Photoshop portion of this. So if that error ever happens with the marketplace asset thing, like a couple of you had, make sure you click that icon on the bottom, that self-service icon, and do the install on the Epic Launcher Unreal Engine. And that will allow you permission to get the asset from the marketplace. That goes for all of you. We're going to run into that every time pretty much, I think. It's just how these computers are locked down by SVA. Okay, I'm going to start working on my image for Photoshop here. And what we do right here is the workflow that I want you to use for your homework assignment for next week. We're kind of rushing through things today and introducing it. Just spend a little bit more time for your assignment making a more detailed scene and world. So you don't have to have a green screen image for this. You can cut it out however you want, but this is what I have for right now. So this isn't a cutting out class. So I'm just going to do this really quickly. It's a fairly low resolution image, so the hair isn't the highest detail, but good enough for our purposes now. The point is that you need something on a transparent background. I don't really care what it is. And the next thing that I want you to do is to crop it to a square. Unreal Engine likes textures that are 1-to-1 proportion. If it's not 1-to-1 proportion, then you're going to need to put it on a plane in Unreal Engine that is the same proportion as whatever your weird size is. Because if it's not, it's going to be skewed, right? It's going to be stretched in a weird way. If we make the graphic 1-1, then I know that the thing I'm putting it on in the world needs to be 1-1. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out. Save it as something that supports transparency, like a PNG is fine. Style guide, T underscore, call this yeehaw, underscore diffuse, T underscore for texture. So I have a PNG of it. And we'll import it into the Unreal Engine. So whichever folder that you're clicked on when you import is the folder that the asset's going to import into. Okay? So if I wanted to click on, create a new folder, call it Yeehaw, and I click into Yeehaw, see I'm in the Yeehaw folder now. If I add an import while I'm in this folder, it's going to put that asset in there. So go ahead and click the big green Add Import button. Right here it says Import, Import Asset. This is how you import a texture, an animation, a 3D file, a sound, whatever it is. It's the same general thing. Import, browse to wherever it is that you saved that from Photoshop. And you should see that it imports as a texture file. Texture files in Unreal have the color coding red. Another thing that you should notice here is that, see the little asterisks in the bottom left? That means that that asset's not saved. So if my computer were to crash right now, I would have to re-import this asset. Not that big of a deal, but if I had a lot of work going on, then that would be bad. So one way to quickly save in the content browser, there's a Save All button right here. That will save everything, and you'll see that the asterisk disappears. It might prompt you to save over top of the map, save other assets, just click Save. You see now the asterisk disappeared. It's saved. Now I can shut down, reopen, and it will be there again. So I have a texture file, but I can't put it on anything. It's not a material yet. Quickest way for us to make a material is to right-click on the texture and go up top. It says Create Material. Create Material. Call it something. And now the material is green. The material is also not saved because I just created it. If I double click on the material, there's those boxes and lines we talked about. You can grab onto these things, move them around. Over on the left, you have a preview. In this case, the preview is a sphere. Below the sphere there's also different shapes that you can put it on. We're putting this on a plane, so I'm going to click the plane. And there it is. Notice that the background's not transparent though. Well, that's because we haven't plugged anything into opacity. We have to tell it that it's transparent. So follow along here, this is important. If you click on this big node here and go over to the left, you can change the blend mode from opaque to translucent, like that. And notice now opacity is no longer grayed out. And I can go and grab onto the alpha, which is the A here, RGB and alpha for alpha channel. And I can drag from the alpha by left clicking and dragging to opacity. And now it's cut out. Another important thing to know about planes is that by default in Unreal Engine, it's not two-sided. So if I look at it from the back, it's invisible. Why do you think that is? Most things don't need to be two-sided, right? Cuts down on processing power. You don't have to render it twice. There's a checkbox down here if you want to make it two-sided. Just know it's going to be mirrored. Something that you might want to be two-sided, leaves on a tree, a window if you're looking at it from both sides. I don't know, you're making a street sign and you're using a plane for a stop sign or something like that, and you're just using a plane, two-sided if you're going to see both sides of it. After you have your material made, you can go in the top left and click Save. And now we can put this on something. If I put it on this chair, I could just drag and drop it on this chair. If I put it on here, we're going to get very unexpected results. Because this material, this chair doesn't know how it's supposed to put this material on it. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about UV mapping. UV mapping tells the mesh where her face should go and how it should align on the chair. It's not a trivial task. For our purposes, though, we're just putting it on a plane. So I'm going to go to the Basic tab here in Place Actors, go down to Plane, drag a plane into my world, move it up a little bit, move it over a little bit, drag the material onto the plane. And then rotate it so it's not upside down. Move it back, I'm going to scale it up. And I know this is a lot. We're going to be doing this every week, and hopefully this recording is recording, so you'll be able to refer back to it. That's why I want to keep it relatively simple with Photoshop instead of diving into something like After Effects right now. So you might screenshot this and be like, all right, I'm done with it, it's good. You could. But for our purposes in this class, we're going to be doing most of our compositing back in a compositing tool like After Effects, or maybe even Resolve, gives us a lot more control. And also in this case, the picture will look better in Photoshop, but in future cases, the video will look better if we composite it in our post-production software. So I'm going to show you how to separate out the foreground and backgrounds now. In the top left, this little drop-down menu right here, there's a little spot that says High Resolution Screenshot. If you click High Resolution Screenshot, there's a little camera button in the bottom right. If you click that, it's going to output a screenshot. It will pop up here on the bottom right. And here's a nice clean screenshot the size of my viewport. There's a multiplier box up top here. This is multiplying the size of this viewport here on your computer. In the top left, there's a little drop-down menu right here. High resolution screenshot. Be careful putting large numbers in screenshot multiply. This could crash the program very quickly. I would never go above like a 4. And honestly, on these computers, I probably wouldn't go above a 2. But try it out, see. So what I'm attempting to do now is I want to separate out the foreground, which is these chairs and stuff, and the background, which is the dinosaur and the rock and the clouds. I want to separate those out on different elements. Okay. So in my screenshot, they're not separated out. They're all in one piece. So the way that you could do this is select your foreground assets. Chair, chair, floor, floor, statue, table. Everything in the foreground, right? Everything in the foreground. And if you go to the details panel for those assets, and this is very important, you type in custom depth. Custom depth. And there's a little checkbox right there that's not checked right now that says render custom depth. This is going to create a matte for these objects. So now if I go back to the high resolution screenshot tool and I click use custom depth as mask checkbox, it mattes those things out. It puts a fake green screen back there. The green screen is actually going to be transparency. And now if I click the camera button, check it out. I have my foreground separated out as a matte. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to then do the opposite, which actually I don't have to render custom depth on the background. I could just turn these assets off by unclicking the eyeball right there. So just select them, unclick the eyeball. I'll actually turn Miley off here too, because I just want the background. Not moving my camera at all. In the future, we're going to do camera movements and stuff. We're not worrying about that right now. We're keeping it simple. And now I can just render out this background. And now I have the background and the foreground rendered out. So now if I go back to Photoshop, where's this at? If I go back to Photoshop and I open up these assets, I can composite them together. like you would anything in Photoshop. Bring Miley over too. Flatten this down. Oops. Not flatten it, just merge it. Copy her, put her in, drop her in between the layers. Goofy scene, but we've established how to render out a foreground and a background and put a graphic between them. This is the principle that we're going to use in the entire class with video, still pictures, anything like that. It's about a foreground in front of your video or your picture, and then a background behind that. You can have multiple foregrounds if you wanted to. Just separating out the computer assets allows us to do things with them. And this is not just an Unreal Engine thing. This is how George Méliès did his paint the black spots on the glass, shoot through the glass to replace his heads. This is how they did the sunrise, where they walk through the street with all the cars honking at them. It's the same sort of idea, creating mattes and foreground and background elements. This process of using the high-resolution screenshot tool is not something that we're going to be using going forward. Or, I mean, if you want to take a screenshot, that's how you do it. But we're not going to use it as part of our real pipeline. I'll just show you this today as an easy way to get something easy like a still picture out of Unreal Engine. But going forward, things are going to be much more dynamic because we'll be working with video. Okay. So for your assignments, I want you to build some sort of virtual world and composite some sort of still picture into it. Okay. I don't really have any guidelines of what those pictures or what that world is. That's up to you. You're the creative one. So go ahead and do that. Think about foreground and background and replacing and lighting and that sort of stuff. This doesn't really look very realistic now. Well, I mean, there's a dinosaur and a giant cat. That's why it doesn't look realistic. But also, the lighting from the picture doesn't match the scene. So, in reality, if this was our intention, was to make this scene all around, or the whole time, we would actually want to light Miley and the cat to match the shadows of the chairs going up to the right. Lighting, shadows, those sorts of things are going to make your composites much more believable. This is just a brute force example. The same way that you would do compositing in Maya or Cinema 4D. Render out a foreground, render out a background, composite them in After Effects or Nuke or Resolve. So next week we'll be getting into video. I'll show you how to bring video into the Unreal Engine. I'll show you how to render video out of the Unreal Engine. And we'll play around with Sequencer, which is the timeline in Unreal, where you can add keyframes and animate stuff, cameras, objects, that sort of stuff. For next week, like I already said, this is your listed assignment. Post it to Canvas. We're starting pretty simple, but we will ramp up the difficulty. like I said, the very first class, we need to make sure that we're hitting these milestones, because if we're going to do the hard stuff, we got to be able to do the simple stuff. If you're struggling at all, hit me up on Canvas. I'm hoping that this video is going to record, and I'll post that on Canvas as well.